So, have you ever taken a really deep breath of fresh air and wondered exactly how it stays that way? Well, it doesn't happen by accident, and it certainly isn't magic. Keeping our air clean is actually the result of a massive, highly structured, and honestly pretty fascinating regulatory framework. If you're stepping into a facility operations or environmental compliance role, understanding this framework is absolutely essential. Today, we're going to unpack the massive rulebook that governs national air quality. We'll translate all those dense legal requirements into a clear, approachable roadmap so you know exactly what's required, why it matters so much, and how your specific facility fits into the big picture. Here is exactly how we're going to break this down today. First, we'll decode the basic air quality rules, then look at state plans in action and track some specific air pollutants. After that, we'll dive into permits and source monitoring, talk about what happens when federal rules override local ones, and finally, look at the very real cost of non-compliance. Okay, let's jump right into Section 1, Decoding Air Quality Rules, Understanding the Framework. Who actually writes the rules for the air we breathe? Now, you might assume it's just one giant federal agency sitting in Washington, writing a single massive manual for the entire country. But the reality is actually a highly coordinated partnership. We've got these massive federal environmental and health goals on one side, but to actually work in practice, they require actionable, highly localized rules. Enter the State Implementation Plan, or SIP. To really understand the SIP, think of the federal government as the corporate headquarters. They set the ultimate standards for what is safe and acceptable. But the states? They're like the local franchise owners. They have to create a custom, state-level game plan to achieve those corporate standards, and then get that plan officially approved by headquarters. This ensures that the ultimate goal of clean air is met, but the specific strategy is completely tailored to the local environment. Moving right along to Section 2, State Plans in Action. From coast to coast. You can really see this dynamic play out in the real world. Up at the top level, you've got the federal government setting these broad, absolutely non-negotiable health targets for the entire nation. Meanwhile, state governments are the ones rolling up their sleeves. They're actually writing the precise rules, issuing the specific facility permits, and doing the daily boots-on-the-ground enforcement required to hit those federal targets locally. And listen, a one-size-fits-all approach? No way. It just wouldn't work for a country this geographically diverse. Just look at the sheer scale of these localized plans. Alabama has specific controls tailored to its heavy industrial and manufacturing base. California, which battles some intense smog issues, focuses really heavily on stringent vehicle emission checks. Way up in Alaska, their plan literally has to account for unique cold weather considerations that wouldn't make sense anywhere else in the country. Even territories like Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands have highly customized plans. Because every single region has a unique environmental footprint, their compliance game plan has to be just as unique. All right. Section 3, Tracking Specific Air Pollutants. What are we actually looking for here? What exactly do these state plans require facilities to control? These state plans aren't just a bunch of vague guidelines. They target very specific chemical culprits. States are required to monitor and reduce these key pollutants every single day. First up, we're looking at sulfur dioxide, which largely comes from industrial fossil fuel combustion. Then there's particulate matter. These are so microscopic that dozens of them could fit across a single strand of your hair, yet they can lodge deep inside your lungs. We've got ozone, which you've probably experienced as smog, forming when industrial chemicals literally bake in the sunlight. Lead is tightly controlled for sure, given its severe toxicity. And finally, we have nitrogen oxides, heavily tied to power plants and traffic, and carbon monoxide, an invisible, odorless gas that reduces oxygen delivery in your body. If your facility produces any of these, believe me, you are on the state's radar. That brings us to Section 4, Permits and Source Monitoring, the day-to-day reality of compliance. This is where we get into the practical business reality of operating under these rules. Let's look at how this builds a compliance pathway for any modern facility. Step 1, you absolutely must secure an operating permit before you even think about firing up equipment that emits regulated pollutants. Step 2, you have to implement continuous emission monitoring. The state needs undeniable, hard proof of what's going up your smokestack. And Step 3, you have to submit routine compliance certifications. It is an active, endless loop of verifying that you are playing by the rules. So the absolutely crucial point here is that a permit isn't just some nice piece of paper you frame and hang on the lobby wall. The true legal requirement is what's called source surveillance. This means you are legally obligated to keep a constant, scientifically verifiable eye on everything your facility breathes out into the community. Make no mistake, active monitoring is the beating heart of local compliance. But what happens when things don't go according to plan? Let's explore Section 5, when federal rules override. The backstop to local control. Air pollution is incredibly tricky for one simple reason. It totally ignores state borders. The wind doesn't magically stop at the state line. If a facility in one state is pumping out massive amounts of nitrogen oxides, the wind can carry those emissions directly into a neighboring state, completely ruining their air quality. When an issue crosses state lines like that, the federal headquarters has to step in to ensure fair, safe air quality for everyone living downwind. And that introduces the Federal Implementation Plan, or FIP. This is the ultimate safety net. If a local state branch drops the ball, maybe their plan is way too weak or they fail to enforce it, or they're just polluting their neighbors, the federal government steps in with a mandatory override. It's basically the corporate headquarters taking the keys away from the local franchise to make sure the standards are actually met. Which brings us to our final section. The cost of noncompliance. What actually happens when things go wrong? Let's take a look at the serious hammer that falls when these rules get ignored. This is a severe escalation process that literally no business or state ever wants to trigger. Step 1 is an official public finding that a plan or compliance is simply inadequate. Step 2 involves the implementation of painful, mandatory sanctions. And Step 3? That's the complete federal takeover we just talked about. You lose all local control over how businesses operate in your area. Let's make this abstract idea painfully concrete. The real-world pain of non-compliance is absolutely massive. We're talking about cripplingly strict review processes that can stall a new facility expansion for years. We're talking about the state potentially losing millions in federal highway funding as a penalty. It means mandated federal operational rules replacing your customized local ones, not to mention drastically increased fines and relentless facility surveillance. The financial and operational risks, they are staggering. Which leaves us with this final, absolutely vital question. Are your facility's operations fully aligned with these state game plans? Understanding this complex web, from the overarching federal standard all the way down to your local permit, is the key to responsible operations. But it really begs the question. If regulators audited your facility's emissions data tomorrow, would you be safely holding a localized permit? Or would you be inviting the federal hammer to drop? Take a hard look at your compliance pathway, because the air we all breathe depends on it.
If you found this helpful or want to stay updated when this regulation changes, subscribe and support the channel. And if you need the full technical details on this CFR, click the link in the description below. See you next time.